What's going on, everyone? Anthony from Chronometer Check here, and today we're going to be taking a look at and investigating one of the most beloved children of the entire watch community. As I'm sure you could guess, that is in fact the Seiko SKX. Now, a couple of years ago, Seiko decided to discontinue manufacturing of the Seiko SKX. With that said, following that, prices have recently, inflated because it is such a great watch. It was a watch that was highly recommended for so long. But now prices have started to get absolutely bonkers. I mean, I see these going for sometimes $300, $400, almost even $500 for a new old stock online, and that's absolutely ridiculous, at least in my opinion. And in this video, I'm going to get into why I think that is, some other alternatives you might want to consider, and with that said, let's get into it. First things first, I do want to say thank you so much for all the support you guys have been showing me recently. Really, very much appreciate it. We hit over 1 million views on this channel, which is a really big milestone, and I really love, the opportunity I've had here on this channel to kind of connect with all of you fellow watch enthusiasts and to really be able to kind of share a passion that I love so much. And, my girlfriend really appreciates it because I have someone else to kind of talk to about watches and without talking her ear off. So, thank you again. I would appreciate if you could drop a like on this video, again, just to keep the momentum going for the YouTube algorithm. But yes, Seiko SKX. As you can see, wrist check, I am wearing my SKX 009 bleached bezel. It does have kind of a faulty crown right now. That's kind of to fault of my own. I did wear this to the beach last year, and I guess I didn't do a good job of washing off the salt water, so now the crown and even the bezel is a little bit sticky, so this watch is due for kind of a cleaning. But I've had this for I think 4 or 5 years now, so it's a watch that has really been through some stuff and has been kind of designated as my beater watch. But regardless, the SKX, should you buy it? Should you not buy it? How much should you pay? Well, first things first, we have to go back to the history of this watch and learn, why it was so highly regarded and what about it made it so highly regarded before it was discontinued. And part of that was the fact that it was such an affordable, well-built dive watch for the money. Now, it does have an ISO certification, which means it's built to very, very high standards. Professional divers could use it and do use it to success. And it is a very, very rugged and tough watch that's more than meets the eye. But with that said, a lot of the hype around the watch was because you could get such specifications for such an affordable price. Now, a couple of years ago, before the Seiko SKX got discontinued, it usually would be able to be found for sometimes even under $200 used on the secondhand market, and sometimes new for around $200, which makes the watch an incredible value. Now also the movement itself is Seiko's pretty much entry-level automatic movement, 7S to 6 movement, which is known much more for the fact that, one, yes, it is an in-house movement built by Seiko, which is quite an impressive feat, of course, I must say. However, it's definitely not known for its accuracy or even its features. It's pretty much a reliable workhorse that's known to go for years and years without even needing a service. It could be bumped, dropped. I'm not saying you should drop it, but it can and kind of survive all of this trauma that you put it through, which is, part of what makes the SKX such a reliable tool watch. But with that said, it kind of lacks some features that we see in today's time, such as hacking and hand winding. Now, those aren't the biggest deal, but these little improvements over time kind of start to get missed. Now, in this day and age, there are some other options that you might want to consider instead. And actually, some of those options are kind of even upgrading on top of some of the specifications that the SKX has. For example, the SKX has a Hardlex crystal, which is Seiko's proprietary former crystal, which is kind of in between the hardness of a mineral and a sapphire, but not quite as scratch resistant as a sapphire crystal, and so it can be scratched, but also not as bad as a mineral. One of the other things that made the SKX so highly regarded, aside from its ISO certification, and part of its ISO certification is actually its 200 meters of water resistance. Now, obviously that's, amazing. That's great. That's fantastic. But I would have you ask yourself, how many of you really do use that, and then also consider there are other options available that do have reliable 200 meters of water resistance. And finally, there are a couple of reasons why people just love the SKX from kind of like an aesthetic or sentimental standpoint. And if that's the case, listen, if you just really love the way the SKX looks and you cannot see yourself living without this type of tool watch in your collection, then sure, I get it. I mean, you might want to pay a little bit extra to get one. However, I still wouldn't suggest spending more than like $300, even if it's discontinued. Of course, that's completely up to you and your budget, but just my standpoint. And one of the other reasons that people, gravitate towards this watch so much and sort of recommend it all the time is because of the nostalgia from it, right? Like, I know for a lot of people, including myself, this was one of my first ever mechanical watches I've owned, so therefore I have a very kind of soft spot for it. Now, someone who's just getting this watch for the first time doesn't really have that same level of connection to the watch, right? You have an opportunity to try different watches, to kind of move on with some of the new, innovations that have been coming out recently, and really enjoy those and kind of, kick off your collection or continue your collection with these other great pieces that, some other brands are doing. And with that said, let's get into those. So one of the probably most popular recommendations, and one of my personal recommendations for the best entry-level dive watch as of recent, is the Orient Kamasu. I mean, this watch is absolutely beautiful, absolutely amazing, well built, 200 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal, in-house Orient movement with hacking and hand winding. Kind of everything the SKX had that was great, but also upgrades a few features. Now, the one thing that it kind of really lacks that some SKX purists will kind of say that it's doesn't live up to the SKX is the ISO certification. And to that I say, if you're someone who's like a professional diver or a real hardcore enthusiast, I completely understand. But if you're just someone who enjoys watches, you like wearing them, you don't do anything crazy, you're not going diving to the depths of the ocean, and if you're like me, who really all you do is some depth diving, then this is going to be absolutely more than adequate for even when you go to the pool, to a beach. Don't forget to wash off the salt water after you go to the beach. But yes, this will do actually everything that the SKX does in that case. And it also has the advantages of, being a little bit better built and very similarly priced to the SKX was when it was more affordable. Now, in this day and age, as the SKX goes up in price, the Orient Kamasu can be found for even, more affordable than the SKX is going for right now. Quick note, this is a strap code third-party bracelet. I highly recommend it. However, the Oyster bracelet that it came on was pretty good, and honestly good enough if you just want a kind of one and done package, because this bracelet is kind of, will bump up the price of the overall package a bit. I think it was like $85 or almost even $100. So, but I like it. I like the little bit of flash, the little bit of bling that it adds, and kind of gives me, honestly, gives me SKX vibes on the Jubilee. And as you can see, the Kamasu is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's a really good looking watch on top of that, and they did some nice and interesting colors. Like, you don't really see red dials too often, let alone in a dive watch. Now, another brand that I think is doing really well right now, and I know you're probably saying, what do you mean another brand? This is literally a Seiko. Well, this is kind of like a sort of a mashup between a Seiko SKX 013 and a Long Island watch SKX. I'm not exactly sure on the model that it was based on, but Long Island watches, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them. I think Mark from Long Island Watches is doing an excellent job. This is not a sponsor review. This is a watch I actually bought from a modder with my own money, and I just happen to really like it. But essentially, the Islander watches are they have a lineup of divers that are kind of like the SKX, except they use upgraded parts in all different facets of the watch. Like we spoke about earlier, the SKX lacked a sapphire crystal. Well, the Islander watch has a sapphire crystal. The SKX lacks a ceramic bezel, and the Islander watch has a sapphire bezel. The bracelet, like we reviewed earlier, in the Orient Kamasu, the strap code bracelet, much more hefty, solid, and the bracelet that comes in the Islander is exactly that compared to the more lightweight and jingly-jangly Seiko SKX bracelet. And also the movement. The movement is upgraded to have hacking and hand winding. Now, like I said, this is kind of like a mod, a mishmash, so they took an Islander watch and then put the SKX 013 dial on top of it. Kind of a little bit, some people might not like that, but personally, to me, it's kind of like the best of both worlds. And I was considering just picking up an SKX 007 instead of this at first before I saw this, but then again I saw the prices, how crazy they've gotten, and honestly I thought this was a great alternative, and I'm really happy I got this because it has still the style, the reminiscence of the SKX without, or even with many upgrades that I would want from it. And another option to consider is actually a lot of Seiko's other offerings. Here we have the Seiko 5KX Sports Divers, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. This was released a couple of years ago, and while it's not a 200-meter water-resistant true dive watch like the Seiko SKX was, I mean, you know, again, consider how many of you really are going to push that 200 meters of water resistance to the test. And I would argue for many of us, 100 meters of water resistance is more than fine. You could definitely, you know, go to the beach with this, go in the ocean, go in the pool. 100 meters of water resistance is sufficient. Now, it doesn't have a screw down crown. That is definitely unfortunate, but still 100 meters of water resistance is 100 meters of water resistance. And Seiko is pretty rigorous in their testing and water resistance measurements. You know, like a lot of brands might say that a watch is water resistant to a certain standard, but their testing regimen might not be really up to snuff with Seiko's, who's known to really be very rigorous, and you know, you can be very confident in their water resistant rating, at least for a while after you get the watch. Over time, water resistance can degrade, but yes, in short, check out the 5KX Sports Divers and even some of Seiko's other divers. I mean, they have the Turtle. They have a whole bunch of divers that I think are really, really great and, you know, fantastic alternatives to the Seiko's own SKX. So closing thoughts, don't get me wrong, the SKX is still an absolutely cracking watch. Did I just say cracking? I feel like I've been watching too much Just One More Watch. But the SKX is still a fantastic watch. Now, I just wouldn't suggest paying the crazy exorbitant prices that it's going for in this day and age. Now, if you're someone who's, you know, the ultimate mega Seiko collector, yeah, you'll probably want an SKX in your collection. I would suggest maybe find a used one, even if it's a little older, maybe the movement is not running. Maybe consider, you know, finding out how to replace the movement with an upgraded 4R36 movement so that you can then have the benefit of hacking and hand winding and a brand new movement, which wouldn't set you back too much. And the savings you would get from having a pre-owned SKX and then putting the movement in would really, really help out. But, you know, there are so many other options to consider these days, like the Islander divers, like the Orient lineup of the Kamasu, and even some of the newer divers they're releasing, and even some of Seiko's other offerings like the 5KX Sports Divers if you don't really need the 200 meters of water resistance, and then also some of Seiko's other divers that do have 200 meters of water resistance, like the Turtle, like the Mini Turtle, and cost very, very similar to the SKX would have costed otherwise. Let me know what you think, guys. Let me know in the comments below what's the absolute most you would suggest someone pays for either a new or a lightly used Seiko SKX in this day and age. Let me know some alternatives that you think would make a good alternative to the SKX, and would you buy one? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, and if this is your first time here, please hit subscribe for more videos to come. And with that said, thanks so much for watching. See ya.